Hello and welcome to my second episode of Am I the A-Hole Postpartum Edition. If you missed the first episode I did, I encourage you to check that out. We talked about boundary setting in early postpartum around visitation, and I talked through some of the reasons that I think some families are setting up the limitations that they are. This day's topic is similar as in it relates to postpartum visitation as well, but it has a bit of a different flavor to it. So I thought it would be a great follow-on episode to take on. So with that, let's dig into it. So the post here, am I the a-hole for this baby postpartum situation? So the poster starts out explaining a bit about her birth experience, and she talks about how she didn't feel very supported during labor. She talks about having a personal difficulty with a second-degree tear, and she talks about ending up having to stay longer due to some health complications with her baby. So it sounds like overall she's had a not so exciting or positive experience in her birth, and therefore I imagine that that's leading into some of the emotions and the presentation of what the situation ends up unfolding into. So it sounds like her husband went right back to work pretty quick. She's been able to get him rides set up, but she herself is not interested in having to drive. She has, however, visited her grandparents, which she describes as being a quick drive about 5 minutes away. Her husband's family, on the other hand, they are about 30 minutes away. And her sister-in-law has expressed some complaints to her husband that she does not feel like she's being included in this new experience or the new family. And she seems put off by the fact that they haven't come out to visit with the new baby. This ends up going around and, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, girlfriend, mother, all this ends up coming to a head, making comments about the lack of visitation. They feel like she's being controlling. They expect her to be more involved with their family and all this. And she ends up going ahead and blocking them. So she blocks them. And obviously this creates a situation. She just wants to she's expressing that she just really wants to be able to heal. She feels like she was kind of taken to the end of her rope, and she's being told that she needs to grow up, and this is somehow her problem or whatever. But needless to say, I feel like, again, this is a good example of a situation that with a little bit of postpartum planning and communication before the baby came probably could have been avoided. So let's dig into it a bit. So first, we have a situation where the mother is recovering. So she has had a tear, which is a birth injury, and this can definitely complicate your postpartum recovery period. I don't know how many women expect or know about the possibility of this being an outcome when they go into their birth experience and are planning for it or have an idea of what it will be like to recover. I don't think that gets talked about too much. That aside, when I was having my third baby, I was working with a midwife, and she asked me if I had ever heard of the 5-5-5 rule. At the time, I had not. I had two babies up to this point, and I had never really heard this as far as framing or conceptualizing postpartum recovery. So the rule is 5 days in bed, 5 days on the bed, and then 5 days around the bed. And the idea is to set the expectation with the new mother that the postpartum period early in those first 2 weeks especially is really going to be one of rest, and it should be conceptualized to them around one of rest. The first 5 days, the expectation of the new mother should be you have had a good day if you've laid in bed and you've taken care of your baby. Maybe you read a little book, you read some books or do some quiet activities like that, but you're really just laying, relaxing, resting. The second 5 days, now you're up a little more. Maybe you're doing a puzzle or a game. You've invited your older children in the room and they're playing with you a bit on the bed. But the expectation again is still that you really haven't left the bed aside from going to the bathroom or taking care of some basic hygiene needs. You're not cooking dinner. You're not going for a walk. You're not doing some errands. That is 10 days. That's 10 days worth of needing support. The last 5 days being around the bed means you're still kind of in that room. You're not going out and about into the world yet. You're taking it easy still. Maybe you're doing some light housekeeping, cleaning up the room, doing some activities. You're taking care of yourself more, but still within the context of being around the bed. Certain traditional cultures have much longer lying in periods. There are 30 days, I've heard 40 days, like a moon cycle, that kind of thing, where there's traditions built around supporting the new mother, postpartum recovery, and enforcing some sort of lying in period. Now, obviously, different people are going to have different needs. If you had a surgical delivery, such as a cesarean, you will likely need more recovery time, and the 555 plan may not be adequate. You may need to extend that a bit. If you had a very uncomplicated delivery and you find yourself in a situation where maybe this seems like too much, certainly there's flexibility. This is an individualized thing where you can maybe relax and do a little more if you're feeling up to it. The main thing, though, is to build in some sort of conception for new mothers or mothers that have never had this experience or don't know what to expect, to help them understand what their expectations should be for themselves, and then to help communicate that out to their family so that the family understands that, oh yeah, it would be normal for the first few weeks of this postpartum period for the new mother not to be going and visiting and doing things. I think that this is a good example of a situation where that expectation was not either clearly understood by the new mother and by her family. So I'm guessing that likely she experienced this tear. She's finding herself in a lot more pain than she expected. And she's like, I really wish I had more support. And I really don't feel like going anywhere. And I feel like everybody is expecting me to do a bunch of stuff, sit in a car, be uncomfortable, drag my baby out. And I really just don't feel like that's what I want to do. And so now she's gotten to a point where she's shut down, and it's easier for her just to block the people and to turn that noise off rather than have to try and deal with the drama. And I don't blame her for that. I think that that's realistic. So what could she have done to make this experience a little better? Well, again, if she had some sort of concept or and prepared herself a little better with the idea that, hey, when I have this baby, it's very likely that for at least the first 2 weeks, I'm going to be in my room, maybe in bed. And because of that, I need to make sure that I have the supports in place around me to make sure that while I'm in that bed, I am fed, I have water, I have entertainment that will help me sit in that time, that the chores and the normal maintenance of the house is taken care of, that if my husband needs a ride to work, he has that ride to work. It's easier to say, I'm going to set up all this stuff and make sure that it's all available to me, and then not need it and say, oh, we only need a week's worth of rides, so thanks for your offer, than it is to say, oh man, my recovery is a lot harder than I thought, and we don't have the supports in place, and now I'm like having a meltdown. So I always encourage people to be a little more conservative, get more support than you need for a longer period of time than you might think you need. And that way, when the time comes, you can always let go of supports if you don't need them, but you have them in case you do. So how about sister-in-law and her expectation that the newly postpartum mom is coming to visit? Well, I would say that that's definitely not an expectation that I would ever want to have somebody set with their family. Now, it is true, some people don't have the ability to drive. Maybe they don't have a car. Maybe there's reasons that they are not able to themselves come to your home to visit you. In that case, I think if you can prep them ahead of time that you are going to be staying home for, let's say, the first month with your new baby, and that you don't plan on doing any visiting out, then I think that gives them maybe time to start to plan, if they want to come visit you, what that might look like for them. If that's arranging for a certain ride, working out a fund for Uber, and maybe that is you donating a little bit of money to help get them there to you. I don't know. It depends. It's going to depend on your own financial situation, your family's financial situation, the situation that we're looking at. Now, I think the thing that really offended the sister-in-law probably in this situation is that she knows that the original poster has gone to see her grandparents. And in that scenario, she's feeling like, well, you went and saw your grandparents, but you're not coming to see me. Now, I can imagine that maybe her grandparents, they're probably older people. They could be living on their own, but they might also be in a home. But regardless, they're probably elderly folks who maybe they can't drive for whatever reason. And because there's such a short distance from her home, she's decided that, okay, in this scenario, I really want to make sure that they have an opportunity to see the baby because they might not in a month. So I'm going to go and make the effort to go see them. Maybe she's very close to them and they provide her a lot of emotional support. And again, they don't have the means to get to her. So I'm not So I think it's fair for her to go see somebody. If she wants to get in the car and drive herself five minutes or 5 miles away and go visit her grandparents, I think that's fine. The sister-in-law, however, is a different story. She's farther away and she's not necessarily that type of emotional support. I think the thing that's hard for a lot of the in-law families to consider or to really deal with is that for a new mother, she's typically going to be more interested in connecting with and reaching out to her family supports, the ones that have been with her through her entire life, rather than reaching out to the husband's family supports because she's not as comfortable with them. And especially given that postpartum is such a vulnerable, intimate time, she's maybe less comfortable with having them in that space. And for all the boy moms out there who are thinking, well, the only way I'm ever going to have access to a grandchild is through the experience of his wife, well, that might be a little awkward or or uncomfortable for you to think that she's not going to necessarily, that his wife, the mother, is not going to be as interested in you being in that position to care for her as you may want to. I mean, the best you can do in that situation is set up a support, show her that you're very supporting and let her have the space that she needs, because ultimately, again, this is a very vulnerable, sensitive, and intimate time. So making sure that the people that are in that space are people that she wants in that space is going to be important. And don't take it personally, because it's a temporary state of time, and you'll be able to be involved as long as you have a good relationship and respect the boundaries that get set. So again, if this was me or advising a client on how to plan for their postpartum, I would have I would have set her up into a situation where she understands that she's likely going to need support for at least a couple weeks, perhaps longer. Help her get the support in place and help her communicate out to her family that visitation would be coming to her, not going out. And then from there, if there are certain exceptions, like a grandparent or something, to make sure you communicate that. So when somebody finds out that you went to see grandparents, they're not offended that you went and saw them, but you're not coming to see them. So again, I think just like the last one, a lot of this with a little bit of planning and some better communication probably could have been avoided. The main takeaway here is for new postpartum moms to understand, or soon to be postpartum moms to understand, that the period immediately after birth is really for you to rest and recover, and that it might take longer than you expect in order to feel normal and ready to go face the world. That it is not a problem if you feel like you need to spend weeks at home, that societally, culturally has been normal, and that our society has shrunk that time and made it seem abnormal. It's appropriate for you to communicate to your family that you plan to follow a more traditional, conservative plan around recovery, and that you would love to have them come, but that if they come, you want them to, maintain short visits, be of service somehow, and that you're not looking to entertain. I hope that the original poster here is able to get the support she needs and is able to work through some of these issues with her family. I hope that if she has another baby, that she's able to plan ahead and maybe get a doula if her husband is not really the great labor support person that she hoped for. There are different options available to women to get the support that they need if their partners or their family isn't able to find or provide that support. So I hope she figures out what she needs to do here. Again, I don't think she's an a-hole. I feel for her in her vulnerable emotional state. I understand that sometimes you need to set a hard boundary, and the easiest way to do that might be to block for a little bit. But I hope she is able to come back around and repair some of this relationship once she's feeling better, and that they're able to move forward and have that family support, because I do think it's important and valuable to have family support. And it's great that they are only 30 minutes away in the grand scheme of things, considering that a lot of people have farther away family. So with that, I invite you guys to check out the first episode again if you haven't. You can check out my page. I offer consulting services to help create these postpartum plans for expecting parents. I like to include mothers and fathers in those plans. I'll help you learn how to communicate to your family, how to make sure you have the supports you need so that your postpartum period is much better than ending up on a Reddit forum asking if you're the a-hole. So with that, I hope you have a great weekend. Reach out to me if you have any questions or if you need anything, and I'll talk to you next time.